Hello, this is the discussion on the song Dreamscape from my album Dreamscape, title track. Very, very important song for me. It was something that would be a part of my foundation and still is to this day, is to the way I do my writing and the music, the style that I write in. This was written somewhere between January and May of 1995. I was not quite as good as keeping records back then as I am now, so there's a handful of songs that fall into a range. I know the order I wrote them in, but I don't know the specific dates. And when I say this is the day I wrote it on, it's really the day it was finished, because I might start a song in the morning, finish it in the afternoon or evening, or I might start it yesterday and finish it today, or a month or a year or 10 years. So I always go by the date that I finished the song. But this was the 10th song that I ever wrote. So it's very early on in my writing career. And you can tell because it's very repetitive. There aren't a lot of changes. There aren't a lot of builds. There's really only a couple of parts to it. It kind of just adds on instruments, but it doesn't really move in any other direction. But this would kind of go on to serve as the general idea behind what would eventually become the Mental Sauna series, because that is very specifically something that's not designed to be moving around all over the place. As I recall, this just came out of a jam, just playing around on the synth patch that is the main patch that you hear, which is called Fresh Air on the Korg. And I just loved the sound of it. And I remember I wrote the melody first and then came in with the bass notes. The original version of the song just started right with the melody. There was no build into it. So that was something that I added for the single version of it that I released a few months ago, and then re-recorded for this version, save for one other change, which is in the intro. The last bass note in the intro no longer exists. I felt it carried better if I left that note out and just let the previous note ring out a little bit longer, as the synth bass, the harder synth bass, came in for that one measure. So it moves along very nicely throughout. It's just kind of a dreamy song. I learned something very important on this song, though, as I had other people listen to it. And being a very young writer, I didn't quite have thick skin. I took everything to really tightly to heart. I've learned what to listen to and what not to over the years, which has been a big benefit. But at the time, I really didn't. And most of the feedback I got was really good on the song. But what I learned that was really important was that whatever I choose to write the piece of music about, it doesn't matter if that's what the listener hears. I'm talking about instrumental music. When you're dealing with music where you're telling a story with lyrics, it's a little bit different, but just instrumental. So I could have written this song about floating on a cloud, or scuba diving, or being on an airplane, or just my ability, like if I could fly, my imagination of what it would be like to fly. I could have written it about being in the mountains, being at a lake, anything that I felt was serene. And so originally I wanted to create something where people would just lock in on what I was feeling, but that's not really possible. There's no way, unless you put water in, to say I'm thinking about water. But how would you put clouds in if it was clouds, or how would you put a mountain in if it was a mountain, without doing something obtuse, like putting in animal sounds and mountain climbing gear sounds and stuff like that. So what I really realized was it just matters that I'm creating an atmosphere that people can enjoy. And then they can take it from there, whatever their imagination is. Maybe I like water, but they're not a water person. Maybe they're more of a woodsy person, so they think about taking a walk through the woods. Or maybe I think about the clouds, and they think about being on an airplane. It doesn't really matter. As long as you feel something with the music, as long as you enjoy it on some level, that's all that really matters. So paint your own picture. I'm just saying, here's the palette, here's the colors, let it paint the picture that it does in your mind, and just relax and enjoy it. That was a great lesson for me, and I'm really glad that I learned that so early on, because that really shaped how I wrote going into the future. The other thing that was really important about this song is that this is the first composition that I did that made it to the radio. It, according to the distributor of this project, they said that I beat out 250,000 other songs to get my song on this compilation. And I don't know if that was true. I can only go with what they were telling me, but that's pretty cool. I like that. But it was a very lengthy process between the time that I was first contacted and the time that the song eventually came out. I was very naive. This was one of those pay-to-play kind of deals, which at the time there weren't a lot of ways to get on the radio if you were an independent artist. So I thought, you know what, it's $150 or whatever it is for the entry fee. I'll do it because it could get me a lot of exposure. As it turned out, I actually did hear it on the radio one time. I was living in Denver when I wrote it, but I was living in Colorado Springs when the radio deal came through. And I was driving into the mountains. I can't remember the name of the town I was driving to, but it was somewhere in the mountains. And when you drive through the mountains, you don't get radio signal in there. And I only had an AM radio in the car. And just as I was about to drive into the mountains where it would have cut off, I heard the beginning of the song. So of course I pulled over and listened to it. It's the only time I've ever been able to do that. And I'm very glad that I did. But that was a really incredible feeling. There's certain things as an artist, like if you get to hear your music played in a theater, like at a Harkins Theater or an AMC or something like that, it's amazing. I mean, it's such a euphoric thing to be able to hear your music on that kind of a speaker system, and especially if you wrote it for the film as opposed to it being licensed into the film. Your music is enhancing what's going on the screen, and then you're hearing it in this beautiful surround sound system. It's a pretty cool thing, and this is really, for me, was a very untouchable moment because it's the only time it's ever happened. And it was very random that I just happened to be on that station at that moment, and that I had the ability to pull over before the signal cut out. So a lot of cool elements came together to make that happen. But here is a picture, here is the actual CD. It's called Star Tracks. Dreamscape was track number 6. There were 12 tracks on it in total. I can't remember what year it was that it came out. I want to say 97 or 98, but I'm not positive. But it was a pretty neat thing, and they sent me 5 copies of it as part of the package, and that was pretty cool. So the song did make it onto the complete collection. It was on the first tape, and because it was the 10th song that I wrote, so I was using 90-minute tapes, 45 minutes aside, so it made it onto the first tape very easily, and every version that came out after Dreamscape was on. But at some point, when I started converting to making things on CD, it became part of the first album, which was called Origins. And that had a combination of the first vocal songs and first instrumental songs that I wrote. I had that out on CD for a while. It was mainly just distributed through my website. I didn't have access, again, to Amazon and iTunes and all that stuff at the time. So it was completely self-released. And I was going to re-release all those albums as I had released them in the first place. But as I've grown as a musician, as a marketer, and all that, I realized the albums really didn't work the way that I thought they did. It was just, okay, I've released enough material time-wise to fill a CD, so let's put those on a CD, and now let's move to the next CD and everything that I write until I fill that time up, which I think at the time was 60 minutes or 65 minutes or something. I can't remember now. Not what it is today, because they had increased it at some point. But it was just, okay, let's, as much as I can to fill a CD, and then I'll release an album, because it was very expensive to do it. And I would sit there, I would cut up the books and fold all the pages and staple them together, and my back and my legs would just be killing me by the end of those sessions. And I look back on it, and I'm really glad I did it. I sold a few copies, but mostly I got my music out to people in a way that they could listen to it in a way that looked reasonably professional for the time. The CD face itself was laser printed and very nice. So it was a good thing to do. It was the next stage up from being on cassette. So I also did, I think I did another cassette at a place called Penguin Digital that was up in Denver. And I want to say I put maybe 3 or 4 songs on. I'll have to see if I can find the tape, because I'm sure I have it somewhere. If I do, I'll post a picture of it in the group. But you would basically, I had bought a DAT recorder, and you mix down to a DAT tape, you get it to Penguin, and they would take it and make like a nicely printed cassette with a label with professional lettering and all that. It looked very, very good. And I did, I think, 2 or 3 different tapes with them. I remember one was gray and one was red, and I think one was yellow. Don't remember what was on each one, but that was like, it was one of those things that, like, okay, cool, I could do this. I can work with a production company. I could feel more professional. And I'm pretty sure that Dreamscape was on one of those tapes. But it was a very important song for me. A lot of people have really given me great feedback on it. They've really enjoyed the song. So it's great for me to be able to release it in a nice digital format. I'm very happy with the mix on this. I think it's one of the best mixes that I've ever done on a song. And I hope that you guys enjoy it too. And let me know what you visualize when you listen to the song, what it makes you feel, what it makes you see. I won't tell you what my original intention was, because it doesn't matter. It don't matter. I can't speak anymore. But it's the most important thing is that it makes you feel something, and that it makes you happy, and that you enjoy it, and you just follow along on this gentle, airy, synthesized journey. Thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow in the next video, or whenever you're watching. If you're not watching in real time, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. You can just watch the next one now. See you soon.